The sun had barely begun its slow crawl over the jagged horizon of the New Mexico plains, painting the sky in bruised purples and molten gold, when the giant Apache girl stepped out from the shadowed forest that skirted the ranch. She was unlike anyone the quiet valley had ever known, towering in stature, wild-eyed and fierce, yet moving with a grace that made the wind itself pause to watch. Rumors had already begun to swirl among the few settlers awake that morning. Some whispered of spirits, others of curses, but no one dared approach her. The ranch, a modest sprawl of weathered wood and sun-bleached fences, sat at the very edge of civilization, where the law of man grew thin and nature ruled with unchallenged authority. Inside the main house, the young virgin rancher, a boy no older than 19 but carrying the hard-earned lines of someone twice his age, worked quietly, brushing dust from the floorboards and tending to the horses that pawed nervously in the corral. His life had been one of solitude and duty, of mornings spent chasing the horizon, and nights spent listening to the lonely. Songs of coyotes. He had never known fear, not until the morning the girl appeared. From the moment she crossed the clearing, barefoot and bare-armed, her gaze locking on him like the pull of destiny, he felt a shiver that was both thrilling and terrifying. She stopped at the edge of the corral, her presence larger than the wooden posts themselves, her voice low and trembling yet undeniably urgent. "I'm starving for a man." The words, strange in their simplicity yet weighted with longing, hung in the air like smoke from a dying fire. The boy blinked, unsure if he had heard correctly, but her eyes, wild, unflinching, and shimmering with a raw vulnerability, left no room for doubt. In that instant, the world seemed to narrow down to the space between them, the dusty plains stretching infinitely around them, yet completely irrelevant. She stepped closer, and the horses whinnied in alarm, the sound slicing through the morning like a knife, but neither of them flinched. She was real. He was real, and something ancient, something elemental, had awakened between them. His heart thudded painfully against his ribs as he tried to find words, to offer some semblance of reason or caution, but none came. Instead, he found himself frozen in the gravity of her presence, in the strange, intoxicating mixture of danger and desire that clung to her like the scent of sage and wild earth. The Apache girl studied him, head tilted slightly, as if measuring the exact moment he would break under the weight of her hunger. Not hunger for food, but for something far deeper, far more human, and far more forbidden in the rigid world of ranch life. And in that still, suspended moment, he realized that the life he had known, of lonely sunrises, of endless chores, of quiet evenings by the hearth, was about to shatter completely. She spoke again, her voice softer this time, almost like a whisper, meant only for him. "I need you." There was no malice, no threat, only a desperate, aching plea that seemed to pull at the very fibers of his soul. The boy's mind reeled. This was not just an encounter. It was a reckoning. He felt the stirrings of something long buried, a pulse of courage, a surge of desire, and an inexplicable, magnetic fear of stepping wrong. Yet the Apache girl did not wait. She walked into the corral, moving with a wild confidence, each step sending dust swirling around her like a halo. She brushed past the horses unafraid and stopped just a few feet away from him. The air between them thrummed with unspoken tension, and the plain seemed to hold its breath. "I've walked for days," she said, eyes locked on his, voice trembling yet unwavering. "I've fought through storms, through the desert, through the men who would see me caged or broken. And now I've found you." The boy swallowed hard, feeling the words sink like stones in his chest. He had grown up listening to tales of Apache warriors and the wild girls who roamed beyond the settlements, fierce and untamed, stories of love and revenge, stories that always ended in tragedy. But standing here, with one of those legends made flesh before him, he understood that this was no story. It was life, raw and unrelenting, demanding a choice he had never imagined he would have to make. The girl extended her hand, trembling slightly. The enormity of her stature somehow softened in that vulnerable gesture. Will you come with me?"
she asked.
a tremor in her voice betraying the strength she had, carried across miles of unforgiving land. The boy hesitated, his mind torn between caution and an instinctive, visceral pull he could not explain. He glanced toward the distant hills where the first light of dawn touched the ridges, and then back at her, realizing that the world he knew, the world of order, of law, of quiet routine, was gone. In its place stood a life of uncertainty, of passion, of danger, and of a love so immediate it threatened to consume everything. And in that moment he felt it, the stirrings of a bond that would not be denied, a connection that transcended fear and reason. He reached out, barely brushing her hand, and the touch was electric, sending shivers up his spine and igniting a fire deep within him. Her eyes softened almost imperceptibly, and for a heartbeat the wilderness itself seemed to pause, listening to the silent conversation written in the language of hearts too wild to be tamed. Somewhere in the distance a hawk screamed, a lonely echo against the vastness of the plains, but it barely registered. All that existed was the giant Apache girl and the virgin rancher, standing together at the edge of a new world, a world that neither fully understood, yet both were compelled to explore. And as the morning sun finally broke fully over the horizon, spilling golden light across the dusty land, it illuminated not just the plains, but the fragile, budding connection between two souls thrown together by fate, desire, and a longing older than the hills themselves, a longing that would not rest, that would not yield, that demanded to be answered.